Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today I'm so excited because I went to the mailbox to get yesterday's mail, and there's this package, a tarot package, addressed to me with the return address of Stav Appel, and I recognize that name as a tarot name, so I knew it was a tarot thing that I'm on a moratorium, so I knew I didn't buy it, so I'm like, this is interesting. And then as soon as I opened the box and I saw the contents, I've taken off the plastic, but I haven't opened the deck yet. I saw immediately that, and I know who sent it to me. This is a reproduction of the 22 major, or the triumph cards of the tarot deck. And it's called the Torah in the tarot. A reproduction of the 22 major arcana of the Jean Noblet Tarot of Marseille, created in France circa 1650, with an explanation of the Hebrew letters, Judaic ritual objects, Torah stories, and Jewish holy days hidden in its images. And for those of you who would be interested to purchase this deck, www.torahtarot.com, which I'll post down below. So I know who sent me this. I have a girlfriend of many years, at least 40 years, who is Jewish, and she's a non-tarot person. I have many friends who are non-tarot people, but they're a little skittish about talking to me about tarot. I don't know why. I think sometimes they think they'll offend me, although I say, why would it offend me? I do this for a living, But I think, to them, sometimes the idea of being a tarot person means I'm a little old lady who has people coming in and out of my house all day, and I read tarot cards for them. And so it's a stereotype that I say, no, I haven't read cards with people coming into my home since like 1990. I haven't done it that way. I've been a remote reader for decades, at least 30 years. The only people who come into my home and I read cards for are for friends or family. That's it. My clients I do remotely, and I've done it that way, for decades. But at any rate, it's a stereotype, and I try to express in conversation, which is, I'm getting to the point, that I have an online presence. I do lectures. I get invited to do international lectures, and I know a few things, and I have, a modest but influential, viewership on YouTube, whereby, I do videos, and I discuss historic tarot decks. And I know more than a few of you have purchased decks as a result of, some of my videos, And so then she felt a little more comfortable about discussing an article she read, because she's Jewish, and she read an article about how in tarot there may have been hidden symbols or references to, the Hebrew alphabet. And what did I think about that? And I said, well, it's entirely possible, Now, we all come to life with our own experiences, I am Italian, well, you can see I talk with my hands, but, I'm 70% Italian, or something like that, like 70, 68.9 or something percent Italian. I'm about 25% Iberian Peninsula, meaning, the Spanish and the Portuguese, and what remains, 10% or whatever, 12% or whatever, is French, specifically from the Pyrenees region, where France and Spain meet. So that's my DNA pool, and it's probably explains a lot why I love tarot, because, I'm Italian. I love the Italian decks. It speaks to me, I think there's something to, how you're made, how you're built, how you're fashioned as a human being is what you respond to, and I've always responded to the Italian decks. I like I like the Swiss decks too, which is, borders Italy, and I love TDM. I do. But if there are references in TDM that are not Italian references, it's over my head, because it's not it's not my experience. I don't have enough experience with Judaic and Hebrew references to see it, to know it when I see it, right? But that doesn't mean it's not there. It's just that it's just above my pay grade. Now, I have read and attempted to read many books on the subject with the Tree of Life all, put out there and all the paths. And, my conclusion after really trying to learn it was that it's just not my cup of tea, and it's just not it's not in my DNA to think of it that way. And so when I use TDM, which I do often, right, I read it in the way that it speaks to me, right, which is all anybody can do. However, that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy going down the rabbit holes, and even if I can't even if I don't adhere to it, I like going down the rabbit hole. And so I'm sure she sent me this deck, and I'm going to thank her in the form of showing her this video, as well as probably a 2 to 3 hour phone call that we'll have, as a result. But I'm eager to do a video. Now, let me flip the camera and let's see what's in the package. Okie doke. I took off the plastic so you didn't have to sit through that. All right, it looks like I got some reading to do in the form of booklets. So I'm guessing, okay. I was hoping that the information would be on the back of the card so that it would be like a quick reference to see the image, read about it, and then come back and apply it. But I think what I have to do is I have to read the booklets. There's 2. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a crash course. I'm going to read, and then, not to destroy or take away too much, because I want you to purchase the deck if you're interested in it. But I just want to wet your whistle and, give a few points of interest that might, encourage you to purchase this deck. So I'll be back. Okay, so I have read the booklets, and I don't want to spoil the content for Appel, who did this research and work. So I'm not going to, discuss every single card and what is said. However, I will say that it's kind of interesting. Now, my observation is that these cards, these images already existed, and the origin stories are pretty well known. The game came from Italy, and we can reference images to Italian tradition and religion. Remember, they were Catholic. Now, of course, the Catholic Judaic tradition, they overlap in some regards. I think, we have Mary, they have Miriam, that kind of thing. Mary, the star of the sea, and Miriam is also associated with water, which I think we see Appel discuss with the high priestess. That letter, those marks in the book are representing, reference to water, which Miriam was connected to. All right. Now, they also say that this is the Torah, the scroll of Torah, but clearly it looks like a book. Clearly, the origin stories were already represented. Many of these images, all of these images existed in the Tarot of Italy. Okay. That is not to say, however, that whoever created the Noblet deck, and I don't know if Noblet was Jewish, I don't know, or if the person, who had a hand in this, put in references to Hebrew references, or not. I'll discuss a couple. Here we have the Fool, right? We have a red penis, which could be representative of circumcision. Appel, let me get my notes here. Appel does make a reference to the red penis being, and the cat attacking the penis as being a reference to the evil Lilith, right? Let me see what it says. The evil spirit who stole his seed to provide the world with demons. And that would, so Lilith is the cat attacking the penis, and, there's, references to this, symbol meaning something, the head, the three things on the hat, the markings, 12, anytime there's an occurrence of 12 scratches or whatever, it's automatically the 12 tribes of Israel. This is supposedly, like a penis, right? And the tools to circumcise. And then you might say, well, why are there dice? Well, the dice show the number 8, and the number 8 was on the 8th day a child was circumcised. And then there is a coin which could reference the payment for the redemption of a newborn son. There's even, references to the 3-legged table and the 3 leaves, being a reference to the 3 patriarchs and the pilgrim festivals. So I think what may have happened, if one subscribes to this, is that the archetypes already existed, according to, Italian tradition. And whoever created the Noblet, or the earliest, TDM, which may or may not have been the Noblet, there may have been an earlier one. I know somebody is discussing the possibility that there's an earlier one from the 1630s. But whoever created the original TDM may have taken the opportunity to make references that they understood. For example, the lover card. Now it is singular. It's not the lovers, it's the lover. But here we have 2 women, and supposedly, I think this is Jacob. And he was tricked by his father-in-law to marry Leah instead of Rachel, who was his true love. And here we have a woman who's holding his heart. And then this would be more like Leah, And then the number of leaves and flowers in their hair have to do with mandrakes, the number of sons they had maybe. And, this could be seen to have become a representation of duty versus love. However, the lover card did already exist. Now, interestingly, without the third individual, the lover card was in Italian cards, referencing a betrothal or some kind of marital, contract. So it is interesting that we have the appearance of 2 women and a gentleman in the center. Here we have Joseph, the 10 canopy, the 10 semicircles in the canopy supposedly represent the 10 drops of semen that he emitted, when he was tempted by the Pharaoh's wife, but he resisted. And the number 7 references the dreams that the Pharaoh had of fat calves and fat cows and starving cows, and how the starving cows ate the fat cows, and then, Joseph was known for his ability to interpret dreams and what they meant and how to overcome the famine. And because of this, he was granted a Pharaoh's chariot. So these things already existed. And what my feeling is, these pictures already existed. And if there is truth to the Hebrew or Judaic representations in these cards, is that they found parallels, right? There are parallels, Father Time was already a tradition in Europe, right? But whoever created the TDM, if they were indeed putting in references of, Jewish heritage and stories, then they found a way to incorporate it in the images of the cards. Now, with the Hermit, for example, it had in Italy been a hourglass, and at some point it became a lantern. Now, it could have become a lantern because it was misunderstood, to be a lantern rather than an hourglass, because when things migrated to different countries, the country who adopted it didn't necessarily know what they were looking at, and so they made adjustments or changes. Now, if this is Moses, which is what Appel contends, I don't see the Ten Commandments. I don't see that. That would have loomed large in my mind for, an image of Moses. But it is an interesting read. I'll give it that. And I'm not going to, say more because I don't want to spoil it for Appel, who did his research and his theories, and for those of you who really might be interested in learning what he has to say and the possibilities. My idea, though, is that, of course, these images already existed. They already had their own origin stories. They already had the stories behind them, right? But that's not to say that someone else who created this deck didn't make embellishments or didn't take the opportunity to maybe make adjustments or to make references, or even if none of that is true, even if absolutely none of this is true, who's to say that, someone's DNA who's coming to this, looking at this with fresh eyes from a different culture, says, wow, this looks like a certain letter of the Hebrew alphabet, This posture looks like a particular letter, and this looks like a reference to, Lilith, or whatever. And that would be an example of interpreting the cards as they speak to you, right? So who's to say that the things I've pointed out they may not be, it may not be the Torah hidden in the deck of tarot, but who's to say that somebody looking at it from that perspective, from that culture, from that understanding, might not pick up on references. Now, for example, the emperor, these four semicircles or holes in the shield, we know that those are places where the sword in battle would have come through, right? These are negative shapes. And there's there's a discussion that these represent the four corners of the world, and but it's not really what they were. They were the holes, for where the sword would have gone through, for a knight who had a sword, when they were jousting or whatever, or fighting. So there are some liberties, I think, that, or that were taken in understanding what the existing symbolism already was. And I don't think that these original holes were symbolic of anything except for the fact that that's where the swords went. And at some point, maybe they didn't understand what they were copying, and so, they became something else, But it's still an interesting read. And if nothing else, I learned a lot about Jewish stories. And I think it's for that purpose alone, it's very interesting. And I would encourage you to purchase this, for that, if you have an interest in understanding that perspective. It was under $20. I mean, there's only 22 cards. I get that. But for the amount of information that's in here for learning in a concise way, the arguments for the Torah being present in the tarot deck of Tarot of Marseille, I think it's worth it. It's a rabbit hole that, is worth it. And, whether you agree or not, you're right. It's It's never a bad thing to see somebody else's perspective. Okay, friends, until next time, peace and stay well.